Well, hello! Now, not long ago, I got slightly upset with my GoPro Session. What happened was a crash peeled this back section off, and I was very frustrated after talking to GoPro that I couldn't just simply buy this, you know, a couple of pence piece of bent aluminium and put it back on myself. They initially refused to do anything. They eventually replaced the camera. Now, this was free of charge, so I shouldn't be moaning too much. Though I should say that the battery in this replacement camera wasn't as good as the one I gave back to them. And having just been to Canada skiing where it was down to -20, oh my god, did the battery in this thing suffer. We had 12 minutes of life out of this at some points. Now, you would say, well, it was cold, what do you expect? But in the meantime, my Firefly 7S was getting like 40 minutes, so I was disappointed. So I thought, what is the alternative? Because the Session, because of the way it is, the nice little cube, has become sort of the de facto thing on mini quads. Runcam had the Runcam 3, which was also exactly the same size as this, and then GoPro sued them and they got taken off the market. So what was left? This is the Foxeer, I think they just call it the Box. Yes, the Foxeer Box action camera, which looks like the Session, but it's not exactly the same dimensions. And I think, this is just hearsay, I think it was the fact that the Runcam was exactly the same dimensions as the Session, which got it under litigation, essentially. But let's get this out and we can see a difference. It comes in a box, as you expect. Looks like this. And initially comes like this. You will see that the mountings are exactly GoPro standard, and every action camera in the world seems to use this. As far as I know, GoPro's not suing any of those guys. So the other stuff you get in the box: instructions, Chinese and English, USB cable, small hex driver, a curved mount, as the one that's installed on is a flat one, and this is where things get quite different. You get a live out cable. So you can power it with the 5 volts, I think, presumably it's just 5 volts, I haven't checked, and you can get the video out from it, which is a big difference from the GoPro. Of course, one other big difference from the GoPro is that the GoPro Session is waterproof to 10 meters. You drop it in a swim pool, nothing happens, get it wet, it's fine. This isn't, you'd need a waterproof case. So, well, unless you're crashing a lot in the water, I wouldn't worry too much about it, but one thing to be aware of, or if you're using it as a standard action camera, waterproof, not waterproof. I keep bringing this up because it's obviously we're going to compare these. Is this worth the extra money, or is this just like a nice bargain steal and does better things? That's what we're going to try and find out. Okay, so this is how it comes in the box, and aside from this mounting, standard action cam mounting as I mentioned, it's got this kind of frame thing here, which is exactly like this GoPro Session thing, which is called the frame, which just snaps out of like this, which is quite nice. Let's just take this out for a proper comparison. And what you will see is the Foxeer is slightly bigger in just about all dimensions. Now I'm going to be concentrating on the FPV part of using this, or as a recording camera, because I don't think that this is really made as an action cam. Foxeer are definitely an FPV company, and just looking on their website, although it says you can get a waterproof case for it and a Bluetooth remote, they don't seem to actually be listed for sale. So a few little differences about here, just to go through a couple. On the GoPro, you have this little side thing, and you've got the USB port and the SD card, which is waterproof. On the Foxeer, you've got this little flap on the top, which gives you access to HDMI, USB, and your SD card. And what you've then got, so you've got the power button, the mode to switch it between still photos and video. This stops recording, and holding in puts the Wi-Fi on and off. So what this is missing is what the GoPro has on the top here, this little screen. If you press the button just down here, you can go through the options. At the moment you see we're doing 1060 wide, 8 megapixels, and we can basically go through this if we want to in order to change the settings. So we can cycle through bits and pieces to say, let's change our settings. We can change from We can change our resolution, not that we necessarily want to. We can change our frame rate, all the basic bits, quite useful. And when we're recording on the GoPro, if we just press this to start to record, we've got a battery indicator, we've got our recording mode, and we've got how long we've been going for. All quite useful. What we've got on the box is, if we turn it on first, we've got the ability to start recording. We've got the LED indicator that flashes on and off to say I'm recording. And that is about it. So let's stop this. Instead, we've got an app to do everything. What you then have is the ability to connect to the Foxeer network. Once connected to the network, there's a specific Foxeer app. Okay, so here I am filming. You will notice this is a bit glitchy sometimes, but what you can do here is sort the settings out. So you go to the settings, and this is my current setting, and you've got a whole bunch of different things you can do here. The main thing people will be looking at is the video resolution, and you can do 4K on it, and you can do, well, all sorts of resolution. The bit I'm going to concentrate on is 1080p 60. The standard is the normal 1080p 60 16:9. It's also got a Supervision Mode. This is, I think, a bit like the GoPro's Superview, which isn't available on the basic session. This needs the Session 5 or the GoPro 4 Silver and above. But yeah, you've got a whole bunch of things on here, but the main thing to do is to obviously have some sort of phone with you or something so you can connect to it if you need to change it. The other thing that's set by default is this thing called EIS. I've turned this off and I'll show you why in a second. This is its own sort of stabilization mode. Rather than sort of show you how this fares against sort of, you know, normal action cam stuff, I'm going to get straight on with like attaching it to a quad, because I think that's what people will really be interested in. Just before we go to the flight footage, here's a couple of other little things that you should take into account, and a few things I discovered. Now, first off, because of the dimensions, if you've got something like, here's the Coppice one, and this has got a nice mount for the Session. It's so good, the Session just stays there. But if we try and put the Foxeer on it, it doesn't want to go. And ditto if you've got these sort of TPU type things, it's not going to go in there. And I often use these little silicone things that I can tether just in case it comes off, which you can't use. So what I'm going to use for testing are quads with little, I've got some foam there that I can just literally fix the quad to it like that. So I don't particularly like doing, because I really like a tether in case the whole thing comes off. Which kind of brings me to the other point. So I was looking through the settings on these and I saw something called Find Camera, and I thought, what's that all about? So this has got a little beeper on it. So typically what you can find when you've had a big crash is you find the quad, but the force of the impact has chucked the HD camera off somewhere, and that can be very hard to track down, which is kind of why I like that tethered system. But if this has gone off somewhere, you can say find camera. Basically you connect to the Wi-Fi network, so you have to be fairly close. Say find camera, and you get this beep. It's not a particularly loud beep, but when you're looking through a field of nothingness and you're looking for a black camera with little tiny bits of orange, any tiny beep like that is actually pretty useful. So I was going to say, you know, carry your phone with you and then try and connect to the Wi-Fi network and do it. But it's got another setting in here that I also found was quite useful, called the record alarm. What you can do with the record alarm, it's off by default. You can set it to 3 minutes, 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And basically, even if you're recording or whatever, after 3 minutes, 5 minutes or 10 minutes, this thing will start to beep. And I figured, as most mini quad flights are about 3 to 4 minutes, setting this to something like 5 minutes is another useful way of doing it. And it's the same thing, I've tried it out, I've let it go for 5 minutes, it starts beep beep beeping, and it carries on recording as well. So I thought that's a pretty good idea. I've never seen that before on a camera. I think that's quite nice. Like I said, it's not a big beep, it's not going to help you track down your quad, but the idea being, once you get to your quad, if you're HD cameras come off, you've got much more of a chance of finding it if this is emitting a beep, even if it's a slightly weak one. The other mode change I did on this was to have it start recording as soon as it's powered on. I found, unlike the GoPro, which is very obvious when it's recording, as this starts up it does a bunch of flashing lights and I'm like, is this recording, is this not recording, I can't tell, and then it turns some of its lights off. So I've just changed it so as it powers on it starts recording, and that's kind of useful for me, because what I tend to do is put it in the quad, power it on, have it record, and I'm ready to go in a minute. It's only like a minute's extra footage, and I found that quite useful. Anyway, let's look at some flight footage now.
So off we go, and we're into the air, and we're starting off here with the Gopro Session. I wanted to get a baseline of what the session looks like, and what I'm just going to do is do a lap around the field and try and do the same when I come to fly the Foxeer, so I can kind of compare. And as you can see, the session's doing a fine old job. It's going around quite nicely, and I'm pretty happy with this sort of footage. So we're swapping off now to the Foxeer, and this is with this EIS mode on, this stabilization. Now, when I flew it, I didn't realise that this was on by default, and nothing about it quite looks right. The quad seems to be moving in a kind of weird way. I don't know if that's the stabilization, and we seem to have a little bit of a shake to the camera. And I just wasn't aware this was the situation until I got it home and found that was the case. Obviously I needed to go and then turn it off, but unfortunately I had to come back the next day, which meant different conditions. So this is it without that stabilization on, and aside from the fact it's a bit sunnier, it still looks not right. It's in the corners. There's something unnatural about the movement of the quad as it's moving around. For me, it still looks like stabilization's on in some weird way, or it almost looks like it's a much more narrow field of view, despite it being, well, according to the specs, wider. So this is the Session and the Foxeer when compared, and hopefully you can see what I mean about the movement. The movement just doesn't seem smooth or right. It just seems like it's stabilizing. Whether it is or not, I don't know, but what I decided to do is go back, well, I say go back, on that same day, is decide to use some of the Supervision Mode to see if that would get me something more like the GoPro. So here we are, we're in Supervision on, and we've got EIS off, which is that stabilization thing, and I think it's much nicer. It's much closer to what I feel is the GoPro. From a distance, things look a little bit weird. They look a little bit squashed. I don't know if you picked that up, and it's because of the way it sort of does the resolution, to try and squeeze more in there. But at the same time, I'm looking at this, and if someone was to say, yeah, this is from a GoPro, I wouldn't sort of call them a liar and say, no, that can't be. That's definitely a cheap old little camera. Yeah, I think this looks pretty good. My only concern with this particular footage is that what I couldn't do is do the GoPro on the same. Well, I could have done. I didn't. Unfortunately, I didn't do the GoPro on the same day, and so we can't get that comparison. And the reason I wanted that comparison is I think on this sometimes we've got a little bit of jello that obviously wasn't there with the Session on day one. However, it's also a lot brighter in the sunlight, and this means that the shutter has to go faster, and this can sometimes cause jello which isn't there on a non-bright day, and this is some of the reason people use ND filters, basically to slow the shutter speed down to avoid stuff like the jello effect. So yeah, that was my only concern there. Other than that, I think the camera does a pretty good job. That said, I can't just leave it as we have it here, so I need to go and do some more on this, and helpfully enough, I'm going to the field fairly often, and when I take a 5-inch quad with me, all I need to do is pack 2 cameras, and then I can have a little bit more of a comparison and get to feel a little bit more how I feel about this camera. But I think overall it shows a lot of promise. I think there's definitely something here that's going to make it a useful camera. And hopefully as time goes on we'll find more TPU and other types of mounts that are going to fit it a little bit easier. Now if you want bonus points, and literally just that's your prize. See if you can guess what quad I'm actually flying here, and my clue is it's none of the ones that I featured earlier. This is the out-of-the-box settings, and it's on Betaflight 317, and if you can work out what that is, I'll be pretty impressed. So as I mentioned, I'm only testing here the 1080p at 60 frames a second, and as I said, Supervision seems the way to go. But if you'd like to see it in any of the other modes, if you want to see what the live out view looks like, although I can't think it's something you're going to use on a mini quad, then let me know and I'll see what I can do. So this Foxeer box came from the nice folks at Banggood, so there'll be a link down below where you can check out in more detail. And until I'm back with some more footage from here and some other stuff, I will catch you in the next video. Bye for now. Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.